I keep filming at nighttime, so that's why the lights are always off behind me. But today I wanted to talk about my experiences caring for the largest snake that I've ever cared for before, which is my boa constrictor, Rosie, who is about 22 years old now. I've had her for less than a year, but she's definitely changed a lot. And she's about 7.5 feet. So of course there are pet snakes that get bigger than 7 feet. There's Burmese pythons, anacondas, reticulated pythons, stuff like that. But still, I would say Rosie's decently big compared to your average snake, even compared to this one here, which is a very similar species. This is a BCC, or boa constrictor constrictor, while Rosie is a BCI, or boa constrictor imperator. But first, I want to show you this dude that we have. He's going to be for sale soon. He's not quite there yet because we still want him to gain some weight, but he's been improving a ton, which is very exciting. He just shed, so he looks really good too. These are also known as red-tailed boas here, just because you can see their tail's kind of red. Okay, that's not related. But I thought this is the perfect opportunity to show you just how much they change, because this guy isn't even that small. They start much smaller than this. He's not like a hatchling. I forgot his age, but here's his approximate age, so yeah. But this guy is really simple. We're feeding him more frequently than your average boa. Some boas will eat every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, some every 4, some up to every 8 weeks. But him as a small one, he's much more frequent, but the males are small. One of the biggest things I noticed, even just with this little boa here, is just how strong they are. Like, compare this guy to say a corn snake or some sort of colubrid, even a ball python of this size, the strength just is not there. He's very relaxed right now. He's moving around, exploring. I might have woken him up. But once he really grips on, it's nothing painful, nothing that can hurt you, but it's kind of ridiculous just how much strength he has. Like, he can just hold on with like the very end of his tail or whatever. We know that snakes have a lot of muscle, but he is even more so. And my reason for mentioning that is you might have an idea of just how strong the big ones are. This is Rosie, the full-grown boa constrictor. Believe it or not, that other boa will someday be something about this size. Admittedly, Rosie's a female and that one's a male, so females do get bigger, but still you have the idea as if it was a female because they start out the same size. I can't get her head over here. I can't even get her entire body in shot. There she is. Hi. Okay, yeah, so this is Rosie, the boa constrictor imperator, or a BCI. Although they look different than the BCCs and other subspecies, which there's a lot of, the husbandry for these two at least are the same. And of course, as they grow, they're gonna need some changes. But she might be easier than you'd imagine. I was very nervous and hesitant getting into this snake. I had like a notice of like maybe a 6-hour notice of getting this animal, and I had never worked or even touched a snake larger than a full-size ball python. So I was like, what am I getting myself into? Now, I've shown it a lot, but this is an animal that was never handled during the majority of her life. I'm getting distracted just because that looks kind of cool. So as always, I gotta give you a quick little replay of how she was when I got her. I'm at my old high school.
Well,
Okay, wait. Now, those clips that you saw are something that you're probably not going to have to deal with if you get into a boa this size, because you're probably going to start with a smaller boa. Usually, people that sell the boas, they'll be selling them as hatchlings or newborns, so you really get comfortable with them at a small size instead of just immediately jumping into something that's this huge, because it was definitely more intimidating going straight from ball pythons to this, like overnight, literally. I'll get back to her personality later, but some stuff about her enclosure. I'm sure that's one of the biggest questions, is just how big does it have to be? Well, it sounds like the community standard is about 4 by 2 by 2 feet for a boa this size. We opted for 6 by 2 by 2 feet because that just felt so small at just only 4 feet. Again, she's about 7.5 feet, so being able to let her stretch out almost completely felt much better to me. People say like, they don't move, which is true, they don't move that often, but when they do move, I want her to be able to. Like, she has a water bowl on one side, her hide on the other. I want to add a couple branches in here. We probably could have made the enclosure taller so she could climb more, but even as it is, I can add more for enrichment and everything. And she does use all of this space. There's a very warm side, and then the large dish on the other, which so many enclosures for these snakes have dishes that are too small for them to soak in, which just really bothers me. Rosie's not much of a soaker at all, but we do have other boas that do like to be in the water more, which seems to be something that they do more than other snakes. Like, a ball python soaking is not a good sign, which I actually did a video on that. But my understanding is that boas like this might just happen to soak more frequently. So basically that's my mini rant of like, give them some space, okay? So she's able to stay hidden under her hide, she can bask on her hide, she can be around in the middle where it's like a mid temperature, or she can go all the way to the coolest side with the water there. It is big looking at it overall, like I could lie in it if I wanted, but it really doesn't take up that much of a footprint. Like imagine, I don't know, a large dog, even a dog of any size would need something like the size of this room at least. Like if you live in a 1-bedroom apartment, a dog is probably gonna be fine in that, but you can stick a snake this huge in something that just fits in the corner of your 1-bedroom apartment, which is pretty nice. I'm not gonna complain. And then Rosie herself, she definitely looks big, because I mean, she kind of is big, but I got a video before I took her out, because when you see her in the enclosure, she looks oddly small, like you could just pick her up with 2 hands, which is kind of what I do. But then as she stretches out, she suddenly becomes this thing that stretches across the entire room almost, or like half of this room. So basically she looks small, you pick her up, she looks kind of big, and then she feels extremely heavy, but she's actually not that heavy. In fact, last I weighed her, 17 pounds. When I got her, right before I got on the scale, I was like, she'll probably be at least 30 or 45 pounds, something around there. And then she was like 19 at the time, and then she's lost a little weight because she was overweight before when I got her. So she seriously still feels so heavy, like way more than, I'd still say it feels at least like 25 to 30 pounds, not just 15 to 20 or so. So basically she looks small, but she's actually kind of big, and she feels heavy, but she's actually pretty light. But she's very dense for sure, and I think it's that muscle that really holds onto you tight that kind of convinces you that it's weight when it's actually just more strength. So that's what I'm talking about. Like the first tip I got when picking Rosie up was use your shoulder as an anchor, not your neck. Because if they really wanted to, which they would never want to, but if they were, say, falling or something and they need to constrict, they have that strength there where they could certainly tighten around your neck. Now, if she was like constricting at full force for some reason and I was dying, I think I would be fine. I can't guarantee it because I haven't tried it. I believe I'd be able to pry her off, but I'm not 100% sure. But thankfully, because they're such a slow-moving and docile species, you can take your time to anchor her where you're comfortable, and then there's like no hazard. So Rosie is a size snake that I feel perfectly comfortable handling myself. Nobody has to be around. I don't need a spotter or supervision or anything or a helper. But then if someday we had a Burmese python or something, I think between Rosie and the larger pythons or boas is where I cut the line of being comfortable by myself. So large snakes can certainly become more dangerous if you're unprepared or do not have the help that you need at the time. But something Rosie's size, I would be perfectly happy to have more boas this size and work with them all by myself. So yeah, the power all around is crazy, just like with feeding. Now, fun fact, Rosie was never tongue fed as a youngin' or as an adult even growing up. So sometimes she just won't take from tongs. We've gotten her to take from tongs maybe 3 times in her life here. And the other times you literally just have to throw the frozen mouse in, or frozen rat. So luckily they're frozen, it's not this live thing that can gnaw on her, but it's kind of pitiful. You can't watch this amazing snake eat, you just throw it in, and then a few hours later it's gone. So I'm glad she's eating, I'm not complaining, but it's kind of annoying. So right now she's on jumbo rats, which she could honestly take larger meals. I'm sure she would take rabbits, but her weight's been maintained really well with the current schedule she's on with a jumbo rat, much less frequently than we feed any other snake in the room. So admittedly, she might actually be the easiest animal to care for here. I think of the husbandry as almost the same as ball pythons when it comes to humidity and temperatures, but I'm using the same substrate for her. I do use heat bulbs for her instead of a heat mat because she does really enjoy to just come out and sit under those bulbs during the day. While for ball pythons, they are much more of a hidden species. They like to hide and stay comfortable. So I use heat mats with them, but even though the temperature, I keep them both around like 90 to 94 or so for both species. So for the smaller one, it truly is like identical to ball pythons, which actually we've used heat mats and heat lamps for the smaller ones, but they always pick the heat lamps over the mats. So that's something I learned. They are much more of climbers than any other snake that I've worked with, other than like our carpet pythons. Now, more about attitude. There's a lot of variation between any animal. You can never guarantee what an animal's gonna be like, but as I learned myself, people aren't lying when they say boas calm down quite quickly. There are some snakes that are just always angry and you just always have trouble taming down or getting them to tolerate you or making them comfortable. Even my black rat snake, I've had her for years, and she still hates people. Admittedly, I don't handle her enough, but even when I was handling her very frequently, there was almost no change. Meanwhile, Rosie went from this terrifying beast thing to this in a matter of weeks with little, like basically I just left her chill and calm. I didn't do anything with her for like 2 weeks, and then I started touching her. That sounded kind of weird. And then I started kind of like interacting with her. And then from there, once I could like interact and like have my hand on her and she wouldn't hiss or anything, then I would kind of pull her out, put her on the floor, and then from there, I could actually pick her up and handle her like this. So it was less than a month from going from completely angry to arguably the friendliest snake in the room. And a great thing is they are just so slow compared to others. If she really wants to be, she can be somewhat fast. Like when the weather's nice, we let her hang out in the yard, and she moves, but not too quickly. Like she's not gonna escape, and we're not gonna have some new invasive species in North Carolina. Meanwhile, even the carpet pythons, which are much larger than like an average snake, they're not larger than Rosie, but they are much quicker. They remind me a lot of colubrids, just based on the speed and agility and how slim they are too. Because Rosie, there's just a lot to hold on to. So another big thing with the big animals is who has more control in the situation. And it feels pretty even. Not even, like I still definitely feel like I have more control than Rosie in this situation. But overall, it's closer to even than other snakes. Like a ball python, what can they do? They can squeeze or constrict you. Nothing's gonna happen. They're not that strong. Like they're strong for their size, but you get what I mean. Compared to a human, like a toddler could probably pry it off of themselves. And then ball pythons are slow and they can bite, but unless they bite you like right on the face or something, you can keep handling them, you can still move them, they can hold onto your finger and you don't lose control. So Rosie is different in that sense. Like if she were to bite and constrict, there's a lot of power there. And say she bit my arm and constricted, it would be kind of difficult to deal with that, especially by myself. Thankfully, they're very predictable animals, but even then, I'm not going to die or something. So yes, like in those crazy foreign countries where there's massive snakes that occasionally eats a person or a child or a dog or something, those are harder to work with, but we're talking mid-size large, medium large, mid-large, because like they're large, but it's all relative, I guess. Oh no, oh no, oh no, she's unplugging it. So, okay, here's an example of control. Who has more control here? I'm not sure. Wow, look at that. I regained control in minutes. So that was kind of an example of like where her strength comes into play. And I really just had to be careful to like not break anything. So although it's like a slow and simple process, I definitely feel out of breath anytime I do anything with her. I still need to make like a workout video just featuring snakes. So I am still amazed that a boa that I just showed you before can grow to this in a matter of years. It's very impressive and very cool, which that goes for lots of different animals, but just, I don't know, thinking about how many rodents it consumes and how much like weight it eats and poops out over the years to achieve this animal. So yeah, honestly, it's really not that different. I don't feel any more or less nervous taking Rosie out than other snakes. Honestly, I feel possibly the most comfortable, even though I've cared for her for the shortest amount of time compared to almost any other snake in the room here that belongs to me. She's easy to predict, she's slow, she tells you when something's wrong. Like if I bother her too much, or that time I got in her enclosure for that video intro, she started hissing early on before she did anything. She didn't even move before she started hissing. So extremely predictable, extremely slow, but at the same time, they are extremely strong and pretty large. So I would happily get more snakes this size, and it's easier than I think the average person would imagine. So the enclosure takes up minimal space. Even now I have enclosures on top of that enclosure. The husbandry is simple. I didn't mention the poops are massive. They are bigger than any dog poop I've ever seen. And she doesn't even eat rabbits or anything. She's just eating very large rats. So that's probably the worst downside, but it doesn't go missing. You always see it. It's right there, right in your face. There's no losing Rosie poop. So yeah, if you're interested in a snake this size, I would say as long as you're prepared and know what you're getting yourself into, I would not see any reason not to. But admittedly, it's certainly better, in my opinion, to get them at a younger age. I'm kind of a hypocrite saying that because if the chance came where I could get another boa, I would much prefer to just go ahead and get a large one like this instead of waiting for it to grow up. But it's definitely easier when you get it small because you get to know the snake. It's a more slow thing, so you can see the growth, get comfortable with it, and then upgrade the enclosure over time. I'm getting out of breath. It's been about 20 minutes maybe, and I can feel the difference. So it's not like a ball python, but it's not too different. So what are your thoughts? Have you worked with animals this size? Are you interested in an animal this size? Do you only like large snakes or only like small? What do you think? How much space should an animal this size even have to begin with? Because that's a big debate. So this is Rosie. Again, the little one over there is our other boa constrictor, which will be for sale soon on Emerald Scales. You can follow Emerald Scales on Twitter at _Emerald Scales. I'm at Instagram and Twitter, but we don't use Twitter, so Instagram. And you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at GoHerping or Go_Herping if you want to see more. So I'm gonna go get like a glass of water or something, because this is my only exercise and I can't take any more of it. And a thank you to Rosie for being a very good sport in this. So I'm Alex, and thanks for watching.